clock telling me I should get up. I should get up.
Hi, and welcome to The Conscious Loop, where woo-woo and the real world collide. I'm your host, Katrina DeAngelis. Join me as we explore what it looks like to live consciously almost always. Each episode, we dive into transforming mindsets and shifting paradigms through topics such as developing self-awareness, living authentically, communication, strengthening relationships, and leading from the inside out. If you're ready to break out of your unconscious loops and discover what else is possible, you came to the right place. You ready? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to the Conscious Loop podcast, where we evolve you into the next iteration of you, whatever that looks like. So I wanted to dive in today on one tip, one tool, one powerful language shift that can really transform your relationships, your interactions, your experience in the world. And all you have to do is bring awareness and shift one simple word. Now, that word is but. So we're going to start replacing but with and. And just to give you some context and ground this in for you so that you can have some examples of what this might sound like and how this might be impacting your daily interactions, listen to these sentences and as you hear them, experience them as if you were the receiver. Somebody was saying these things to you. You just did a PowerPoint presentation yesterday for work and your teammate comes up to you and says, "Hey, you did such a good job with that presentation. It was amazing, but the last slide could use some work." Versus, "Hey, you did an amazing job with that PowerPoint presentation yesterday, and I have a few suggestions for the last slide if you're open to some feedback." That is such a good idea, but it might be too costly. Versus, "That's a good idea, and we need to consider the costs." So the impact of using "and" really keeps the conversation going. It keeps people open. It's expansive. You're adding something rather than retracting it. And is usually seen as a positive-oriented word rather than but, which is seen as a negative, more retracting word. So let's take this even a step farther, right? Imagine in your relationships, you're talking to one of your best friends, you're talking to your partner, you're talking to a parent, and they say to you, "I hear you, but I just don't agree." How does that feel? Versus if they had said, "I hear you and I have a different perspective." This approach values both viewpoints without dismissing either one, paving the way for a constructive conversation. If somebody says to you, "I hear you, but I just don't agree," likely you're going to have a more negative reaction to that. Versus, "I hear you and I have a different perspective," right? That invites a conversation. You're still valid. What you said is valid. And there's another perspective that can be equally as valid. The thing I love about this one word shift, right, is that it invites the possibility that two truths can exist at the same time, right? We can plan a party and still consider the cost. We don't have to not plan the party because it's too expensive, right? We can be resilient and we can be stressed at the same time. We can have done an amazing presentation and it could still use improvement. It doesn't make the other thing or the other side any less true. So it's very inclusive and in really shaping perspectives, right? It broadens horizons, acknowledges multiple perspectives, and it really allows diverse ideas, conversations, viewpoints, and feelings, especially in conversations, feelings to coexist without negating each other, which is going to promote a very healthy, constructive dialogue. Whether it's creative brainstorming, whether it's giving somebody feedback, whether it's having an argument with your partner, it's going to foster unity. It encourages collaboration and is collaborative. It signals that you're open. It signals that you're hearing the other perspective, the other viewpoint, right? It's essential for conflict resolution and building common ground, creative ideas. I invite you next time you're in a meeting or you're in a conversation with somebody and you feel like you're about to say but, you catch yourself, right? Now you have the awareness. Instead of saying but, say and see what follows after that. You can still say the same thing in a different way, whatever's going to make sense to follow and just notice how that changes the conversation. If you're brainstorming for work and somebody says, hey, I have an idea, what if we do this brand activation, one in each city, and we work with different influencers or musicians. Instead of the first thing, if your first instinct is to go, but how are we going to do that? Or, but how are we going to pay for that? Or, but maybe that's a bit outdated. Use and instead. And how might we pay for that? Great idea. And what influencers are you thinking? And I've seen this being done a while. Maybe we can go back and learn from people who've done it and do it even better, right? Expansive, adding on the idea, not dismissing it, not retracting it, not shutting it down. Another thing I love about and is that it challenges absolutism. Do you ever find yourself when you're in an argument, you go to these absolute terms like you always do this or I always feel this way? We use these absolute terms more often than not. They're not actually true. It's not always that way. That's a very extreme statement, right? More often than not, it's not always the case, right? That can really put somebody into a defensive mode because if you're saying they're always a certain way, there's no examples of when they've done differently, when they've done it in a way that's supportive. There's nothing to go back to and reflect on of time that it's gone well. And so, and really challenges absolutism because it pushes back against the notion of a single truth. So, and in and of itself, that word is suggesting multiple overlapping realities can exist, okay? When you did this, when you didn't say bye, when you didn't do the dishes, I felt disrespected or I felt like you didn't care. And here's what I'm hoping for. And very different than you never do the dishes. I always do the dishes. Very absolute. There's not even really room for and. So and is really this like beautiful blossoming word. This simple 3-letter word can be so powerful. And so the only thing I want you to walk away, if it's one thing from this podcast, is to bring awareness the next time you catch yourself about to say but. Replace it with and notice what follows. Notice what shifts, even with self-talk. If you're saying but, if you're butting yourself, replace it with and see how that shifts your own inner experience even and your own inner reality. And is going to enhance communication, make conversations feel more collaborative, open. It's such an important aspect of having a growth mindset. We talk about that a lot, right? Growth mindset, being growth oriented, encouraging an attitude of curiosity, possibilities. And is a very powerful tool for that. It reduces conflict by not dismissing or negating another person's perspective, not shutting down conversations, and really improving and bringing harmony to constructive conversations and communication. And it's going to empower your self-talk. So using and in your internal dialogue is going to lead to a more comprehensive understanding of your emotions and even your actions. If you're butting yourself often, your actions are going to be reflective of that, right? You're going to be shutting yourself down. You're going to not be looking at what's possible, but rather what's going to be in the way, right? And is going to look at what's possible. It's going to look at where are the opportunities. How can you make something possible? Not but this, but that, but here's how it's not going to work. And just even expanding more on that, how it's going to support your personal dialogue and personal growth. It also helps you embrace complex feelings. Have you ever felt like you've been so happy and so sad at the same time? Right? So stressed, but also so in flow. So grateful and also so overwhelmed. They can both coexist. So when you use but, you're making only one possible at that time. So I'm grateful for my job, but it's really stressful. rather than I'm grateful for my job and there's days when it feels overwhelming. Right? Having stressful days doesn't take away from the gratitude, but rather it acknowledges both experiences. It acknowledges it acknowledges the gratitude, and it acknowledges that that doesn't mean that it's not overwhelming sometimes. Both are valid. I want to get fit, but I'm so busy right now. Competing desires. Both can't exist. You're using I'm so busy right now as an excuse, right? The excuse to getting fit. Rather than I want to get fit and I have a packed schedule. Now you're opening up possibilities. I want to get fit, that's a fact. And I have a packed schedule, something I need to consider. Recognizing both the desire and the obstacle with an and is going to motivate you to search for a solution rather than but, which is going to stop you in the thought process. I want to get fit, but I have a packed schedule. That's an excuse. Are you going to be motivated to seek for an opportunity, seek for a way that they can both coexist? Rather, if the self-talk is, I want to get fit and I have a packed schedule. That invites possibility, solution. How can we make both of those things be true at the same time? So use this as you move through your self-talk, as you have difficult conversations, as you're in your team meetings, bring awareness, rephrase the buts, listen more mindfully, and reflect at the end of each day. How did that change your experience? How did using and more really shape the experience of your day? That's it for today. I told you it was going to be short and powerful. One word to really transform and shape your reality in a new and different way, expand your consciousness, and evolve into the next iteration of you. I invite you to follow us on social media at The Conscious Loop. We would love to hear how you replaced but with and the powerful impact that you're seeing from that one simple shift. And let us know what topics you want to dive into in the future so that we can support you in diving into the next iteration of you. Like what you heard and want more? Stay connected with our community on social media using the links below. Like us on your favorite podcast provider and sign up for the Conscious Loop newsletter, where we only send you goodies with one intent: to break your unconscious loops. If you have an unconscious loop you want to break free from, let us know so we can feature that loop on the show. Info and show notes, and we'll see you next time in the Conscious Loop.